Hey, runners only, yeah, let's get it started. Hey, this is runners only with Dom Harvey. Fast paced, slow and steady, anywhere you coming. Just wanna connect for everyone who loves running. This is runners only, yeah, let's get it started. Hey, this is runners only with Dom Harvey. Fast paced, slow and steady, anywhere you coming. Just wanna connect for everyone who loves running. Hey, runners only with Dom Harvey.
Runners Only with Dom Harvey, and I'm sitting in the Ryman Murray Halberg retirement village with one of Murray Halberg's good mates, an absolute legend of New Zealand running from a golden era, Barry Magee. Hello.
Hello, Dom.
Come on, get in nice and close.
Hi there.
Oh, all right. What an honour to be in your presence, sir. 1960 Olympic Games in Rome. The Arthur Lydiard-coached athletes, yourself, Murray Halberg and Peter Snell, all won. It's just an incredible chapter in New Zealand history. There's so much I want to chat about with you today. We'll get to you, the amazing relationship with the amazing coach Arthur Lydiard later. But first of all, take us back to 1960, the Rome Olympics. First of all, how do you get there? You fly there? You go on the boat? How do you you fly there, right?
Well, thank God we flew there. Because when guys like us at the time, we read all the stories, the previous Olympics, of the Helsinki Olympics, everything, often they were in for a 5 or 6 week boat cruise. And, the runners lost half their fitness, and it was a lucky dip, virtually, whether they could compete well or do when they got there. Now, we did flew, we did flew, and we had Boeings or Super Constellations and things at the time.
It's so hot in Rome that the marathon started when? It was late in the day, wasn't it?
Well, the marathon, yes, it's an interesting story of the marathon. We were in Rome 4 weeks for the Great Olympics of Rome, and when Snell and Hallberg, within 1 hour, did something the world had never seen before, of winning 2 gold medals from a little country of 2 million people. But every day the temperature was something like 28 degrees every day, but it was what was beautiful Mediterranean heat. That was the difference. It wasn't humid heat like Auckland has. We have humid heat in Auckland, but it was beautiful heat. But it was hot. And the thing was, of course, it was hot. Now, the week before the marathon was the 150-mile cycle race. Now, one rider dropped dead during the race, probably with the heat. The suspicions around the village was that he had probably also on drugs.
Right, were performance-enhancing drugs a thing even back then in 1960?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. Yes, they were. Yeah, I mean, some of those Russian women and that, they had more hair than you have. I mean, the male steroids and, yes, I don't know if EBO was around in those days, but, no, this was part of it. Drugs were right. And in Eastern Europe particularly, I have never seen a drug in my lifetime. I competed for 54 years as a runner, and I've never seen one. But they were everywhere. But because of that cyclist, all the marathon managers or the athletic managers of probably 50 countries in the world went and protested and said, we will have a runner die if you're going to race them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Rome, in the heat
of the day,
heat, 2 o'clock. It was 28 degrees and hot. So they shifted the time till 5 o'clock. Now at 5 o'clock, and at that time of the year, September in Italy, it got dark about 6:30. So we knew we were going to be running half the race in the dark, and I can tell you it's very hard to see Africans in the dark. That's an honest statement, but anyway, they convinced the officials, the Olympic officials, we will change it. We'll change it to 5 o'clock and make it cooler, because it was more like 18 degrees only, or 20 degrees, or 22 degrees often at that time of the day, or whatever it might be, and and so, but every day we had about 30 days in Rome, and 29 of them was 28 degrees. The interesting thing was the day of the marathon, it was 23.
Oh, what are the chances?
So what are the chances of that?
Right, so the run starts 5 p.m. What It gets dark at 6:30. So how long did it take you? What was your time? 2
hours 17.
2 hours 17. So the last 45 minutes are in like pitch dark?
Pitch dark. And the last 10K is down called Via Appia, which in Kiwi language is the Appian Way. And that goes right down from way out, 10K out, down into the city of Rome. And it's very, very spectacular because you ran past the Colosseum, you ran, and all the famous things that all the famous parts of Rome. It's a very historical city. But the thing was, there was no streetlights in the Appian Way, none whatsoever. And every kilometre, there would be 100 metres of cobblestones. Cobblestones are terrible to run on. They're raised they go curves about 3 inches high, 5-6 centimetres high, and but the thing is, what they had done to try and counter this, they had Roman soldiers posted for 10K, about every 100 metres down on each side of the road with a flaming torch. So it was quite spectacular.
Right, so that's not going to give you much light to see where you're going, but you can just see, the route you're taking.
It was virtually very little light.
Yeah.
It was like running just a bit, nearly pitch dark, but it was dark. You could just see the road in front of you. But the thing is, on the cobblestones, you couldn't see the cobblestones on the razor. I think I prayed all the way every time I hit it.
Did you have to like change your gait or anything to?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, I shortened this. I halved the stride every time we hit the cobblestones. But I was chasing Radi and Bibi Bikila, who ended up as gold and silver medalists. And,
was he the barefoot runner?
Yeah, the winner was a barefoot runner. So it was a historical marathon in the fact that was the first African to ever win a gold medal in athletics, and the first athlete to ever win a marathon, win a race in bare feet in Olympics.
Yeah, that kind of been nice on the cobbles.
And that Rome Olympic marathon is rated about the second or third greatest marathon of the century. And so I feel encased in history, really.
So what place were you in when it got dark, when you finally lost light?
Well, I started the race very conservatively. Yeah. Generally speaking, a distance runner in his early days, he goes out and the gun goes and he goes. But along the way, you learn some very hard lessons. It's not how you start that counts, it's how you finish. So I started very conservatively. I don't know, there was 60 or 70 in the race, and it's probably at halfway, I was probably about 20th.
Right.
Wow. About 20th. But the thing was, I was moving through, and then I was up to about 10th, and then by the time we hit 30k mark.
So it was still light then? Or it was dark then?
No, it was dark by then at the 30k mark. The Russian champion, who had run the fastest marathon in the world, Popov, he caught Julian and Puckett and Magee up at about the 15k or 12k mark, perhaps the 12k mark. I said to Puckett and Julian, I said, we've got to go with this bunch, and I didn't have a clue who they were, but there was about 6 guys. They just went straight past us, so we jumped on the back of them, and that made about a bunch of about 9. But that 9 became 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And by the time we got to about 30, 32k, there was only one guy with me, and I looked at his singlet. I could see he was a Russian. And I found out after he was Popov. He was one of the race favourites and fastest marathon runner in the world or something that year. And, and it was just him and I. And then there was this drink station came up just as we turned into the Appian Way, and he veered to grab a drink off the drinks table because there was water and there was Coke or something. There were several drinks that you could have a selection of, and so he veered and I sprinted. 10k to go. I took off and thought, I just did it.
You're feeling good?
Yes, I was feeling good.
Yeah.
What I'd done up to that stage, I was in control, because I call the secret of success really is control. If you lose it too early or too fast too early, you blow up, and once you're blown up, you're gone, and it's history. So so I started my run at 10K to go, and that was the best thing I could have done. What I didn't know was what place I was in. See, every 5K, all the officials were out there calling times in Italian. We had no such thing as a digital watch or anything in those
no
days.
GPS.
I looked at my watch, and I could see it was 6:20 or something, because there's no other watches in the world in those days. But I didn't know where I was, and so I just put my head down and I went for it. Every now and again, I'd see flash bulbs going up ahead. I thought that's a good sign, because that could be the leaders that were up there.
True.
And so that's the way. And I just kept going, and I managed to get up there. But then,
so when you finished, you weren't aware that you'd won bronze, but you must have thought you were there or thereabouts.
Yeah, I had no idea what place I was in, because the thing is, because it was dark, they'd banned all spectators from the course. So there was no one you could yell out to along the course. And all these officials, so they called you times every 5K in Italian. That didn't help. Yes, and so you couldn't talk to them and say what place am I in? As you went past those the drink stations. So no, I never had a clue. So I had no idea when I crossed the finishing line where I was. And all of a sudden, there was a big, about 2-metre guy beside me, who'd jumped over a barrier, raced out, and he must have been, I don't know if he's a hockey player or a New Zealand rower, and he slapped me on the back. He said, "Well done, Barry, well done. You've done great. That's good. I said, "Where am I?" And he looked at me, if I was a bit stupid, and said, "Barry, you've finished. It's okay."
Oh, he thought you were delirious. Or
he thought I was a bit delirious.
Right.
Where am I? You're at the finish of the Olympic marathon, Barry, was his thinking. My thinking was, where am I?
Well, in terms of place.
Yeah. And there was silence of about 20 seconds. He looked at me, he gave me a hug. Said, "Barry, you've just got the bronze. Congratulations."
Well, I've got goosebumps.
I probably had a tear in my eye at that time.
Really?
It was because it was, thank goodness, it's like you would know the relief that you feel when you've achieved or done something, or as compared to failure. We've all been through failure.
Were you a medal hopeful, do you think, at the start line or leading up to it? What was your expectation?
I probably wasn't rated in the first 20.
Yeah, really?
For world rankings and world class world standing.
The year before, so 1959, I think that's when you made your marathon debut, and it was like 2 hours 30 or 2 hours 31.
About 2:36.
Yeah. How
2:36.
How did you lose 20 minutes in a year?
Training. Just training. Yeah. I mean, Lydiard knew everything. It was the difference. We had the greatest coach in the world, that's proved by Snell and Hallberg. And two absolute champions who they're incomparable still today. You have no idea how great Snell. Like about 4 years ago when Snell was in New Zealand, and he gave some medals to Te Papa, he publicly thanked me in front of 100 people. I think I had tears that day, and he put his arm around me, standing there with a microphone, and said, "This is the man that made my gold medals possible, because he did the 100 miles a week with me when I had to do the work. And I went to his home every night." And that was a very nice compliment. But Snell, as you know, was the athlete of the century for New Zealand. I mean, I wasn't worthy to tie up their shoelaces.
Oh, come on.
No, honestly, no, there's no comparison. No other athlete in the history. Perhaps there's Valerie Adams getting close, and
Lisa Carrington,
the great Lovelocks, and the great people of history, and 3 Olympic gold medals, 2 Commonwealth gold medals, and 7 world records for Snell. And I mean, Halberg today would be running in the disabled games with his crippled arm. He only had one arm that worked properly, and that with it because of a football accident when he was 15.
Yeah.
You know, that was with an arm. In our first trip away in New Zealand, in an Auckland rep team for cross country, we cut up his meat for him and tied his running shoes on. That's what we had to. That was that. And at Halberg, is that being an overcomer? You can see, you know, to me, he is just about the greatest athlete ever. That's where he rates with me. So it's incredible honour in a way that I'm even living in a village named after him. Because when we came here into this village, it had no name. It had no name.
Well, Barry, the funny thing for me is there's a block here in this retirement village, the Murray Halberg village, that's named after you, but you're not living in your own block.
I had to do some fast talking because they said, Barry, you're going to be one of the first tenants in the village. But they didn't see. The thing is, it wasn't called by any name when we came in. It was a street name. When we came, we bought it off a plan, and it had no real name whatsoever. But then they came to see me after we'd been here about 6 months and said, we're naming your village, and we're calling it the Murray Halberg village, and we think, and you are one of the people that have told us about where we're going to have them named, the blocks, or the apartment blocks are going to be named after athletes to tie in with Lydiard and Halberg, etc. Now, it would be fine with you, wouldn't it, if we named your block the Magee block? And I said, no.
Why? Why
I said there's 40 apartments in this block, and I don't want 39 people complaining and moaning to me every time I see them of living in my block. And so I said, no, you name another block if you want to after me. And I said, thank you, but no thank you. And so I turned down that offer.
Well, I've got a far bigger ego than you. I would have been okay with it.
You have a Harvey block?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Okay, so now I know this is your podcast and your story, but I feel like we need like a hat tip to Arthur Lydiard. I feel like he in running circles everyone knows who Arthur Lydiard is, but outside of that, I think if you ask most New Zealanders, they probably wouldn't know the name. I mean, the man's an absolute legend.
It is criminal. It's a very sad story, with Lydiard, that he never got the recognition really in New Zealand. Well, he got some recognition at the time he was about 60.
Yeah.
About 60. But when he's going through the highlight years or the great years, he had problems with the administration of New Zealand, and they more or less said, no upstart coach is going to tell us what to do. So that was Wellington and the administration.
Right.
They weren't happy with Lydiard because he called a spade a spade. He called a fool a fool. And he organised the Egford tour, the Rothmans tours of New Zealand. He did the whole lot himself. He could do anything.
Wait, was there a tour called the Rothmans tour?
Well, the first tour was the Rothmans tour. That's when the Olympic champions came, world record holders came, and Lydiard arranged it all.
Did everyone get some of the sponsors' product?
No, well, see, at the time, some of them were working for Rothmans. We had Bert Sutcliffe.
Right.
We had Don Clark. We had the great footballers. They employed everyone. Not that they have to work for Rothmans. They were just goodwill agents going around the country, helping with schools and helping with sport all over the country in their Rothman cars.
That's hilarious.
So that was the advertising because that
amazing. They had the money, the tobacco companies.
Yes.
So how old were you when you met Arthur Lydiard? How did that come about?
I was 17.
17, okay.
I was 17. I had a coach. I joined the Wesley Harrier Club when I was 15 in Auckland, which was the Methodist Club of Auckland, connected with Bible classes and that. And I went to this Methodist church, a Methodist Bible class. And one of the guys said, because I was playing rugby at the time, and I hurt my finger, had to have a splint for 6 weeks. So it was purely sort of like by an accident. This Bible class mate of mine said, Barry, come along and have a run with the Harriers on Saturday, because we're going to have a run from our church. And he said, what's more, the Bible class girls are going to put on afternoon tea, and some of them are pretty neat. So I'm not sure if it was the run or the afternoon tea, most probably the girls.
Yeah.
Because at 15, I was just starting to take an interest, and they weren't as bad as sometimes their reputation made out for some of the boys. So I went and had my first run, never played another game of rugby, in my life again. But so it was, and so that began, and so that was 15, 17. The club captain was also my coach. He said, Barry, I think I should pass you on to another man to help you. I think you have some potential. I would like to introduce you to a man called Arthur Lydiard who runs for Owaraka, and if he will take you on, that would be good. And the rest is history. So at 17...
So what year was that?
It was 1951.
Right.
1951.
Wow.
So I'm 87 now.
Yeah.
And I was 51. I'll be 88 in 2 weeks' time. But, so he said, come and see me tomorrow. I mean, when I was introduced to him, it was in Hamilton. We just raced around the bridges, road race, and he'd run in the seniors and I'd run in the juniors. And I was introduced to him, and he looked at me as if because he's only about 5'7", I suppose, and I was gigantic 5'8.5". But he looked at me and said, son, are you prepared to run 100 miles a week?
At 17?
Yeah, 17. If not, tell me now, because you're wasting your time and mine if you're not. Well, I can't remember answering him. But what I know is the next day, Sunday afternoon, I was sitting at his kitchen table. Well, he was writing out my first training schedule, which was 100 miles a week of 160K a week. 160K a week at 17, and that's what we all did.
What did your parents have to say about that?
Yeah. I've got to be careful here.
Okay.
At the time when I met Lydiard, my dad was lying in hospital dying from a work accident. I lost my dad at 17, and I can still feel it. It was painful, and the fact that he never saw me have one race in my lifetime.
Yeah,
he was in Auckland Hospital about 2 months. An accident had paralysed his back, and he lay there for 2 months in the Auckland Hospital, and then passed away when I was 17. And at that time was the very time that I met Lydiard. It was the very time I changed my job also.
Right.
And the interesting thing was that Lydiard and my new boss, I was a grocer at the time, a grocery boy, working in grocery shops. They both told my mum, we will help you look after Barry.
Oh.
I mean, and that carried on for our lifetimes or their lifetimes.
So, in a sense, do you think Arthur to you is like not just a coach, but like I suppose like a father figure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, he was. He was sort of to all of us in a way.
Yeah.
His home was open home. We could call him day or night. He was a married man with 4 children, and he worked a full-time job. He was foreman in a shoe factory, and yet he always had time for the runners. Sometimes, if he was sowing potatoes in his garden on a Saturday afternoon when you called in, yep, that's fine. Come and talk to me, Barry. Yeah, and he wouldn't stop. He'd just keep digging or planting his potatoes, but he always gave you what you wanted or needed.
Yeah.
And he was a master of psychology.
Was he? How do you mean?
Well, in fact, he knew, like a good school teacher should, how to handle every type of runner that he was looking after. So,
right.
I mean, Halberg would told me 20 years later, after we'd all retired, he said, I'd go round to the coach's house, he said, and the coach would look at me, Arthur would look at me and he'd say, Murray, did you see what Barry did in his training last week? He did a 3-mile time trial and this. And Murray said, did he? Yeah, and Arthur would say, yes, Murray, you've got to watch your back. This guy is coming, he's improving all the time. Murray said, I'd go home, put my shoes on and go for an extra run that day. Such was the... See, this psychology. Lydiard is a master psychologist.
How good. So, I mean, obviously, like an incredible coach. First of all, like in terms of natural talent, how naturally talented were you 3 boys? There must have been like a fair bit of natural talent there. Was there? Or no? Was it just hard work?
It's hard to rate this potential of natural talent. Snell had outstanding natural talent.
Yeah. It's only going to get you so far, though, isn't it?
Yeah, only so far. That's right. But he had to. But the thing is, by 23 years with Lydiard, age 20, and he wins an Olympic championship.
Yeah.
This was the potential he had. But the thing is, it depends what natural. It's hard to compare. Nick Willis, when he was 18, could run a 4.1 mile. Snell at 18 could run a 4.21 mile. So the bulk of what Snell ended up being and doing was made by Lydiard.
Right.
Like the people like Willis are what I call naturals. Mm-hmm. Halberg was a sort of partly natural and partly just about supernatural.
Yeah.
When he had that accident with the arm, when he came back, because see, if they hadn't have operated and they took out 2 litres clot of blood out of his shoulder, he would have been dead. But he came back with a fighting spirit that is beyond human. Nobody. He was invincible in the spirit, in the mind.
Right.
And nobody. Yeah, and it was even greater than Snell's. Yeah. So the spirit. Oh, goodness, It was beyond human. And if you read a lot of history of champions, somehow they've overcome difficulties that most of us have never faced in our life. But they have a spirit that's unbeatable. It's over their dead body, and they we give sort of 100% in the race. They give about 110. But Halberg, but Halberg and Snell were just they deserve everything they have got in accolades or it was. But Halberg had the mental capacity that wow.
Unbelievable. But the thing is, like anyone, first of all, that's good enough to get to Olympic level, let alone become a medalist. I think you all must have like a certain level of mental toughness or mental tenacity. And the fact that you sitting here talking about Halberg that way.
All of Arthur's boys got it. Everyone he coached.
Yeah.
They got mental, because that's what he taught. If someone pulled out of a race, they didn't contact Lydiard for 3 weeks. They were too scared to.
Oh, is that right?
Because that was failure.
Right.
That was failure.
And what would he tell you off, or why were you scared to talk to him?
I think you'd get a lecture.
Right. Okay.
You'd get a lecture because and one of my quotes to all of my runners, I coached about 30 runners in New Zealand and all around the world, and I'll quote, every winner is a finisher. And every finisher is a winner.
Right.
If you finish the race, even if it's last place, I'll tell my runners, I'll be the first to pat you on the back and congratulate you for finishing the race.
Right.
Because to give in and give up, that in Lydiard's ways was failure.
Right.
And that's what he taught us.
Yeah.
And often races, we got first, second, and third, his boys. In fact, Lydiard was, how good he was is you only got to look at the results right through the 1950s. Or a 10-year period of athletics in New Zealand in the 50s, 60s, 10-year period where every New Zealand championship, there was 5 gold medals up for grabs, what we'd call these days the 800, 1500, 5,000, 10,000 marathon. Arthur's boys won 45 of the 50 in 10 years.
Remarkable.
We absolutely dominated.
Yeah. Do you think, as well as the coaching of Arthur Lydiard, it was the competitiveness of you 3 guys in particular, like pushing each other? Did that must have played a part to the success as well?
Yeah, I raced Halberg, I suppose, from the age of 17 to 30, probably about 100 times.
Right.
The score was 92-8, and I'll guess. You guess who won the 90? The 92.
So he had 8 off days.
He had 8 off days.
I'm sorry, that's mean.
Or a sore toe, or had the cold or something. But I never had the satisfaction. And I did some great races overseas in internationals, and first New Zealander to win an international marathon within the Fukuoka in Japan. No Halberg, no Bailey, no Snell, no Puckett, no. So you'd go out, and it was so wonderful to get away from them. I could start in an Auckland Championship and get 5th.
Yeah,
I could go to Japan and win.
That's incredible. And yes, speaking of that, so it was a very different era. So you mentioned before that you're working at Foursquare. So when you went to the Olympics and to Japan, you that was on your own money, right? You You had to take time off work, get bank loans.
Well, you'll make me cry. I never earned $1 in my 54 years of running, not $1. Every games team I went, I had to go to the bank manager, cap in hand, and borrow money that I could pay bills while I was away, because I'd been times for me happening. So I tried for the Commonwealth Games in Canada and I failed. I tried for the Olympic Games in Melbourne and I failed. It was my third games I got there with Cardiff for the Commonwealth Games, and then 2 years after that, the Olympic Games. So it wasn't like Halberg. He was in both of them.
Yeah.
So here he is, about 4 months older than me, but he'd done 2 games before I'd even started. He had that much more ability and he had that much more speed. I never had speed.
Yeah.
Lydiard said Barry's gift was a beautiful, relaxed style.
He didn't he call you? I was going to ask you about this. He called you like the ballet dancer of the road or something.
That's right.
What did that mean?
Well, he said Barry is effortless. Barry is tireless. He
Right.
could run all day, and he said that's a gift that Barry has. He has this effortless style, and that's his natural. He said because sometimes you got to try and change their style a bit because they're all hunched up in the shoulders or they're not relaxed, But no, Barry, he said that was my gifting, was my naturalness, because
Right.
I couldn't. They could thrash me in speed work and stuff, Snell and Hallbergs.
Oh, come on, you're being very modest here. I mean, you weren't
could.
exactly a tortoise.
They could. Oh no, there was no comparison that with it. See, Snell could run 200 meters in about 22 seconds. Halberg could run 23 seconds. Barry was 25 seconds. See, so when
It's still
the
quick.
last 200 meters in any race with Halberg would put 3 or 4 seconds on me every time because it was down to natural speed. So that was why it was so hopeless. See, because he got as strong as I was. See, I got strong because of my marathon training and everything. That's what made Barry. It's interesting that the more marathons I ran, the faster I got over 1,500 metres, 3,000 metres and 5,000 metres and 10,000 metres. So your speed comes from stamina training. That's one of the Lydiard principles. Speed work.
So those 100 miles a week, like what sort of pace was that done at? How was it just like running as you feel, or were you guys pushing the pace
very
with each?
Specific. No, Lydiard was
Right.
very specific. You ran different days. Like Monday was 10 miles, Tuesday 15 miles. Today you'd run like that, 16k and 30k and 20k and 30k. With 40, weekend long Wairarua over the Waitaks, about 35k, which is 22 miles in those days, all 100% aerobic running, which means running within yourself.
Right.
That was the key. You did 8 weeks of running, of getting strong, nothing else. You didn't train for speed whatsoever. Wow. But there was no jogging in that, virtually. No jogging. It was all specific efforts and training, quarter effort, half effort, three-quarter effort. And
I suppose you had to sort of do it that way because I've got probably more technology on my Garmin watch now than what you, an Olympic bronze medalist, had back then. It's very specific. So you just ran from your gut, how you felt.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing, Lydiard trained us all for about 13 years, and we were at a meeting one night where Lydiard was giving us a coaching speech, and 100 people listening there in Auckland, and Halberg and I were there. Now, we'd been trained for 30 years. It was both the year that we were retiring, but he used people like Barry to speak for 5 minutes and Halberg to speak for 5 minutes as part of the entertainment of the night and bringing his champions along. And after the meeting, Murray went up to Lydiard and said, "What's this new language you're talking about? You're talking about aerobic and anaerobic training. I've never heard of it," Murray said. And Lydiard looked a bit mystified and a little bit sort of concerned. And Murray said, "Do you mean fast and slow running?" And Lydiard said, "Yes." So there was no racing in training. We did eight weeks of just foundation strengthening work. But with that strengthening work, your confidence goes up about 500%.
Yeah, right.
It builds confidence. You go out there and run the stuff and do the stuff the Lydiard way. If we'd raced it or smashed ourselves in training, you wouldn't have it at the end of the 8 weeks. You might be in worse condition.
Yeah.
But Lydiard had it. He experimented 5 years on himself. 5 years on himself to find out what worked. He ran 100 miles a week. He ran 200 miles a week. He ran 300 miles a week in training himself and did this all. This is a wife and...
Sorry, I'm just going to back up there. Did you say he did a 300-mile week?
Yes. Yeah.
That's 500 Ks in a week.
Yeah.
How did he fit that in?
Well, we'll never know. We will never know because he's gone. We can't ask, but no, he did. That's right. If you read his story, Garth Gilmore left us 13 books of Lydiard. Garth Gilmore, the author, left us all the books. So it's all in the books.
Yeah, actually, you can still buy these online too. It's available as like Kindle books, so you can
Run
get
to
these.
The top is the original.
Sure,
and that's perhaps the greatest of all. And that's where Lydiard outlines the theories of success forever.
Yeah,
and at the Olympic Games in Los Angeles in '84, I had 4 days with Frank Shorter and these other Olympic medalists of history. Now, Frank Shorter won Olympic marathon gold, Olympic marathon silver, and 2 Olympics. He was a hero for America. I said to Frank Shorter, "What training did you do, Frank, to get that success?" And he smiled at me and said, "Just Lydiard training, Barry. Just Lydiard training." Yeah, and but all the world were following Lydiard. And they were using his principles, not only Ferguson and MacDonald in their canoes, I've heard them speaking. They'd won about 7 Olympic gold medals in their canoe. They credit most of it to Lydiard. They used his principles. All our cycling world-class cyclists, they used Lydiard. Yeah, they became world-class because the coach in New Zealand was using Lydiard principles. Rusty Robertson, the rowing coach, he took the rowing coach to Olympic goals and 8s in Munich or whatever, and all this stuff. What training did you do? He said, Lydiard.
Amazing.
Lydiard left us a foundation of secrets that coaches are still using all over the world in all sorts. The year before Lydiard died, I was at his place having lunch with him. He said to me, "Barry, do you know that today half the world uses our training principles?" He didn't say my training principle. He said our training principles.
Wow.
Is that a humble man?
Oh, that's so humble.
Yeah, but he
modest.
He would be, to me, he ranked like with Einstein in physics. He was a genius of running, and nobody knows how he knew what he knew.
Also, I feel like he doesn't get the credit he deserves in that. I'm guessing like in when you were running in the 1950s, no one really ran as in jogging. I mean, it was competitive runners, harriers and whatever, but there's no such thing as like a fun run like there is now. And I feel like Lydiard's got a lot to do with that, like the birth of jogging in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, he birthed jogging in the world.
Right.
He birthed jogging in the world. He introduced it to New Zealand as a health thing for everybody at every age. I had a good friend in about the 1950s. Now, the 1960s, he went. he had a heart attack. He went to his doctor. He was age 54. Had a heart attack. His doctor told him never to walk upstairs again and never to mow a lawn again. Lydiard said, absolutely wrong. For the 1960s, he had what he called the Heart Foundation running at the YMCA twice a week, and all the people with heart attacks came, and he coached them. And 3 years later, they all ran the Hawaiian Marathon, the Honolulu Marathon, because he said, no, the heart's a muscle. Yeah. So the medical world were doing the opposite. They were saying, no, you just be careful the rest of your life and you might live umpteen years. Lydiard said, no, you just condition the heart again and restore the heart. And I've talked to numerous people. I mean, one of those Honolulu tours, Lydiard and I and Richard Taylor were tour leaders. Yeah, and I talked to, there's about 70 people signed up, and we went to Honolulu. I talked to lots of them.
Yeah.
They said, when they started exercising, a whole new world opened up. The whole world came back to life again.
Yeah.
And to be running a marathon after you'd had a heart attack 3 or 4 years before.
Phenomenal.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
that's right.
absolutely.
And he but Lydiard and a Remuera doctor put a whole package together to restore, because this Remuera doctor, I can't even remember his name now, he decided that no, people didn't have to sit around and die like the medical world advised at the time. So Lydiard founded jogging. There was a man came out from America, and he took it back.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you about this. So this is Bill Bowerman, who was one of the co-founders of Nike. So he came here in '63. You were still around then, weren't you?
I met Bill Bowerman when he came to New Zealand. Arthur invited 2 or 3 of us as Olympians to go and meet Bill Bowerman on a Sunday run with the Auckland Joggers that him and Colin Kay had founded. They'd founded the Auckland Joggers. And so there was 50 joggers turned out Sunday morning, and we all went up and had a run with Bowerman, who thought he was pretty fit. And his joggers, aged 50, 60 and 70, just left him for dead.
Amazing.
So he got the shock of his life, and he said, America is, we need this too. United States. He said, every week in the United States, he said there'll be a crowd of 80,000 people watching a football game. They all desperately need exercise. He said, down on the field, there's 30 players playing who desperately need a rest. He said, we've got to change things in America.
Yeah. Yes. So Bill Bowerman, the co-founder of Nike, and I think he's famous for making like soles of shoes in his waffle machine.
He used a waffle machine.
Yeah. So what did he come to New Zealand for? Just to basically pick Arthur Lydiard's brains?
To meet Lydiard. Yes, he was somehow impressed with Lydiard, and he wanted to meet Lydiard. And at the airport, when he was going, Lydiard said, Bill, get into running shoes. There's a great future in running shoes. And now, one of the boys I coached 4 years ago, I remember, he became a marathon runner, distance runner, he worked for Nike. I said, what did Nike earn last year? He said 12 billion.
Oh. Wow.
You can see why they've got the Tiger Woods of this world. They just pay people millions. It's nothing. It's all just advertising.
Unbelievable.
But Bill Bowerman, I mean, he's dead now, but he would have left but he and then it went all over Europe, and it went all over Europe with the jogging.
Yeah.
So jogging restores health and mental health and spiritual health and physical health and everything. It helps everybody.
While we're on Nike, what do you think of the current state of shoes? First of all, what were you running in the 1960s? What were your shoes like? Can you describe them?
Well, do you want a good laugh?
Yeah, go on.
The shoes I ran the Olympic marathon in the Rome Olympics, were bowling shoes. We had no running shoes in New Zealand. With all of us, like Halberg and of my era and age, same age group, we probably did 5, 6, 7 years in what was called sand shoes or tennis shoes.
Right.
Tennis shoes. So canvas uppers and a rubbery sole underneath.
Yeah, I remember that. I had them as a kid. You used to get them from like Para Rubber and places like that.
Yeah, Para made them. Para made them. Para Rubber factory. And so it's the Olympic marathon. Lydiard made at his shoe factory with spikes for Snell, and he made the marathon runners. We ran in his marathon shoes. He made them for us, which was a bowling shoe. He said that was the nearest thing I had for runners, and I just glued a heel on because they were dead flat, because bowling shoes on the bowling green weren't allowed to have heels. So he glued the rubber heel on the base. So that Olympic year. So these days, the shoes.
Because I've got some Nike shoes that I save for races, and they are remarkable.
Yeah.
They are incredible. Like if I'm doing a 5K time trial or a 10K time trial, they're definitely worth 30 seconds or.
Well, they on a track race they credited a second lap. So 25 seconds that would be in a 10K just with the shoes. Some say more. Now the difference is, they got carbon fibre in the soles, and it springs. You put your foot down, and it helps your foot to spring forward.
Yeah, there's so much energy.
You try, and on my runners now in New Zealand, I know that are using them. They do personal bests every time they put them on. And,
how do you feel about that? Do you feel like it's sort of there's a phrase that's been used called like shoe doping? Do you feel like it's because I feel like it's one of those ones. It's like everyone can have access to it.
Yeah, well, technology has now overcome training. It's greater than training.
Right.
A top New Zealand coach I was talking to 2 years ago said, Barry, your 217 in Rome would be 210 today, just with the technology of shoes and also
nutrition.
You have carbo squeezies and things on the way that would make 7 minutes difference to any marathon runner today. So someone that's run like Paul Bellinger ran 210, in way back in 1980. That would be 203. So you're up there in any world class marathon.
Yeah.
So technology is the big winner today. Technology. So.
What did you used to eat? Just out of curiosity, like the morning of the say for lunch on the day of the Olympic marathon. What did you eat?
Haven't got a clue now.
And what did you have on the run? Was it like honey? Did you have like honey and water or
nothing?
No,
absolutely nothing. In fact, the nutritionists nearly faint. I've done hundreds and hundreds of stories and testimonies, whatever, going around schools and clubs. I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of present medals. There were speeches and that, and we had nothing. Everything was just so simple then. There's no technology. Just about a seafood diet.
You seafood and you eat it.
Yeah, seafood. That's right. Yeah. I mean, Snell and Hallberg, touring Europe, you'd see Snell and Hallberg and I standing outside a bakery, at 10:30 in the morning having a pie. It's pies.
Amazing.
Anywhere in the world. But today, the technology of every shoes and it's
GPS watches. World. Yeah, I get the sense that you're almost a little bit annoyed by it. Like you feel like it's an unnecessary distraction for the athletes you coach now.
Well, the thing is, they can be dominated by a watch and not by feelings and their heart and their spirit and their mind and their brain.
Oh, 100%. Completely.
And if the watch tells me that my pulse rate is 15 above what it's supposed to be for this, they panic or something. Lydiard taught us all to go by all by feelings and how you are. And he taught us with everything, with no technology. But today, it takes me 1 to 2 years to unwind people from their technology and their watches. Lydiard wouldn't even wear a watch in training or a race. He wouldn't wear a watch. No, he said he said, you'll start running with a watch. He said, you got to run by the conditions. You run with the competition. You run with the race. You run with everything that's in you, but not the technology doesn't really count. So I would listen to times on the way in races because a lot of them you did that, 1 lap, 2 laps, 3 laps in the track races, or your 5 mile, 10 mile time in a marathon. But it didn't make any difference to how I was running. So the thing was, your challenge was to get the best place on the day that you could get under the conditions prevailing, and no technology whatsoever. But say it takes me often 2 years to unwind something.
Yeah,
because a lot of these academic runners too that I coach. Some of them are doctors and accountants and lawyers and goodness knows what as well, and they're the hardest ones to unwind from their technology. They love their technology. But the technology runs their life, and they don't enjoy half the fun of running that we always had. We just ran, we just run.
And you wouldn't have had music either.
No, nobody ran with music in those days.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, good old-fashioned days.
Yeah, absolutely.
But finance was perhaps a huge problem. So I never earned $1 for 4 games I went in. I had to get loans to support the family, the wife and the children, to pay the mortgage and everything while I was away for 8 weeks at a time. It was
different time.
It would take me 6 to 12 months usually to pay the bank back for representing New Zealand. But we did get paid, when we were away. we got 10 shillings a day.
That's $1.
dollar.
$1 a day. Wow.
That's a joke today. $1 a day, out-of-pocket expenses.
And there's another thing I wanted to acknowledge you for. You are the first man in history to run sub-3 marathons in 5 decades: 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. How old were you with the last sub-3?
How did you find that out?
I think I read it online somewhere.
Did you?
Yeah, first man in history to do that.
No, so I got a ring from the marathon statistician of the world in 2001 to say, I just thought I'd notify you. He's an Englishman, and he said he was the statistician for the world marathoning. And he said, I just thought it was of interest to you to know you are the first man in history to run sub-3-hour marathons in 5 decades. 5, the 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah.
Because when I was 64, I ran 2:48 marathon at 64.
No way, 4-minute K pace.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That is mind-blowing. You've read my book. It took me years to get under 3. And that was in my mid-40s. 64.
Yep. Yeah, that's Lydiard training. Lydiard training. I knew how to get fit, how to keep fit, how to peak.
You weren't doing 100-mile weeks in your 60s though, were you?
No. When you're older, you change it to time.
Yeah.
And so if I did 10 hours a week, when I was 25, and I still did 10 hours a week when I was 65, it would be 30 or 40K a week less.
Right. Yeah.
But it's still the time.
Yeah.
So you ran it slower. And everything was slower. But, I mean, you were running in age groups and things like that as you get older. And so all the fun was there. All the competitiveness was there. But your time told you that just because you could run 10K in 28 minutes when you're 30, at 50, I was down to 33 minutes. At 50. At 53, I think... 53, I did the New Zealand 5,000 M50 when I was 53 and 15:37.
Wow.
At 53, and then the 10K the next day at 33:07 or 33.
Jeez, that's good.
Yeah. So because I just knew how to do it all.
And do you think it was like muscle memory from just a lifetime of Ks to a degree? Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. When did you stop? When did you stop running? And why did you stop running?
I was 64. I just won my last national title in Invercargill, the national 10,000. I got a gold there, and a silver in the 5,000, in the Masters National Championships. It was about a month after, and I was running with the Auckland City Athletics Club at the time as one of the coaches, and we were running down Mount Eden on a gravelly path that was quite steep, and and I slipped and fell, and I wrecked my knee. I did and that was the end of the running. The end of the running, because I had a cartilage out when I was 42 of the knee, and then I'd had a trim when I was about 62. Now at 69, it all happened. At 69, I had to call it a day. Because that knee didn't like running. So...
Geez, that's a shame. It would have been interesting to see what you could have achieved in your 70s.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've never had any ifs or buts in life. Yeah. Just one day I was running, and the next day I wasn't. So be it. I just took it and just went... Because I was sort of like 50% coach and 50% runner for all those years. In 1968, my man made the Olympic Games in the 10,000, way back. So the success of Lydiard training was always there. I just put on my coach's hat at 69 and just been full-time coaching from then until now. Yeah. And it's so wonderful to get an email that says, Barry, I don't know how to thank you. I don't know how to thank you. The running and training and coaching has changed my life. Yeah. And that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. To get that. That's the nicest thing I can get.
Actually, a friend of mine, she got personal best through you as well, and she speaks very highly of you. Leslie Turner Hall, she loves you. Yeah, you got her down to a really sharp time. It's such an impact that you've had on people's lives.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's like Lydiard was for us too. Yeah, nobody ever used Lydiard and forgot Lydiard. Yeah, it changes people's lives to have someone I think back at my school days as a good school teacher.
Yeah.
And I think in all my years at school, I might have had 3 good school teachers that patted me on the back and encouraged me because, I was Second World War kid. And at school, all these old, grumpy, retired teachers came out of retirement to teach you with one principle in mind of discipline. They had a ruler behind their back. You got knuckles behind your ear. You got a strap. If we said one word in the classroom, and a girl would get patted on the head and said, "Oh, Rosemary, you could do better than that. Oh, that's not good, Rosemary, what you did," or whatever. And the boy would be out the front getting 6 of the best out of the same, And this was teaching in those days was violent and disciplined, and it was awful. And lots of kids, I think, got ruined for life. But the coach is the same. Yeah. We can make or break the person. You just input into them. You are important. You are special. You and your ability, no limits.
Yeah.
Whatever you can dream, you can do. And that if you're following the principles or the rules that I'll give you, and that there's no limits. Dream big. Think big.
You're going to be doing this until the day you die?
Probably, yes.
Yeah,
well, Lydiard was.
Yeah.
He was doing a lecture tour, aged 87 in America, 87, and he did a lecture one night, went back to the hotel, sat down, and he turned on the TV, sat down, 3 minutes later was gone. Yeah, that was just like that.
Wow.
See, on the job.
Yeah.
But one of the men that was on that last tour of Lydiard with him, doing a lecture tour around America as this famous coach, because the Americans love him more than New Zealanders do. They worship Lydiard in America. And he took Lydiard from one city to another city. And he said Lydiard was just amazing. 1,000 people attended every lecture he gave in every city he went to.
Wow.
1,000 people. And Lydiard, funny thing, the year before Lydiard died, the great coach, the greatest, middle and distance coach of the century in the world, a year before he died, he said, "I think I will probably pass on next year. I'd love to die in America."
Unreal. He
Is
sort of
that
predicted
prophetic?
his own death.
Is that prophetic?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Why did he think that?
I have no idea. No idea. But, yeah, Garth Gilmore told me that.
Right.
Who was his author, and
Yeah,
they were very close.
Yeah.
That was at Arthur. Yeah, Garth Gilmore told me that, I think, at the funeral. Arthur predicted really that he would go. So it was 87 on the job, still going, and perhaps I might be the same because I'll go for training anywhere for one runner. Runner. I was at the club last night, and I had 4 runners running, and they ran the 800 metres at the club, and they got 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh wow! Yeah. How do you feel about your own mortality? I mean, you've it's been such an incredible life, and you've still got so much to live for. How do you feel about that?
No, I'm a Christian. Christians never die.
All right.
We just pass through a doorway, and heaven is the promise.
Yeah.
Promise is the promise. So I've got no fear in dying. I've got no fear of COVID. I've got no fear whatsoever. No, I'm contented and happy. If it's now or 10 years' time or whatever.
Oh, please not now. I don't know how to do CPR.
No, someone said to me yesterday, Barry, you'll live to about 107, they told me. This is on the phone call I was doing, 107. I said, no, I don't think so. And I don't know. I said, no, it won't be 107. I'm going to live forever. They said, how come? I said, well, I've always been told that only the good die young. I should be living, I'll live forever. Because I've always been a rascal, I've always been a joker, and I've always laughed at life, and just taken the ups and downs as they come.
Yeah.
And that's life is a gift.
Yeah.
Life is a gift.
Yeah.
And what we do with it is up to us. We can waste it or use it. And I just want to think that I have used my life to the best possible way.
I feel like we should leave it here. It's been, hey, it's been so good to meet you. What a life. What a story. And I feel like, geez, you're still so mentally sharp and physically. I feel like you're going to be around for a while yet.
God willing.
Yeah. Hey, Barry Magee, you're a great New Zealander. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.